This is Bobby Beals
And Jess Leonard.
with Beals and Leonard Consulting, and this is Insights with special guest Meghan Godin.
Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited for this conversation. For those who might not know your work yet or more about you, can you just kind of give us a little bit of background about your journey from product design to merchandising to the more holistic and sensory design practices that you're currently working on?
Yeah, absolutely. My first introduction to design was with this startup design company. It was more high fashion. And I would spend days in the bead factories in the design district in New York City. And it was the same factory that worked on Ralph Lauren's pieces in the couture world. And that really opened up my eyes into design and the craftsmanship involved, the stories. And then fast forward a little bit, I started designing eyewear at Warby Parker, which was a really fun experience. They were a startup at that time. And after about 8 years in the city, and I decided I wanted to leave, moved to Michigan, where I grew up, I'm from, had a little pause for the summer, and created what I then called at that time Some Things, which was the design of product and experiences. And the inspiration behind that was really, I wanted to share the stories and the maker behind things. Who was creating this? Why? Storytelling is a really big part of my life. And so I started working with hotels, developers. My first introduction in the hotel world was with One Hotels in Miami. So I moved out there, consulted with them, was redesigning the minibar, coming up with the programming, bringing in local partners, influencing and creating that culture for guests. A lot of curation of product too, and again sharing the story. And then was in Detroit for a bit, working with developers, hotels there, and then Auberge called me and asked me to move out to Utah. And I was excited. I always wanted to go out west, and I was like, great, this is my first opportunity to be able to do so. And so I piloted the experience design role for them, which was a lot of what I was doing, which is really thinking about, okay, what is the holistic guest experience from pre-arrival? So what's the story that's being told to get them excited about their stay, to the vessel that they hold in their hands when they arrive at the hotel? And is it a warm hot toddy, or is it more of this prickly pear cactus drink that they get? How does it tie into the brand direction and story? And
Rewinding back to your from Some Things to the One Hotel, and you're getting into hospitality, you're thinking about guest experience. Were you excited? Were you feeling challenged? What kind of feelings were coming up as you were doing this? Because we get to know you now, but back then, you're always excited now. I love your passion. So what was the feeling back then when you were getting into this?
I think sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? There wasn't a role called my design in that way, more that curated role that I kind of helped build with Auberge. And my just innate curiosity was just sort of guiding me, I think, in some way, and this really creative. I didn't feel any boundaries. It was, full form creation was just inspired talking to other people and vendors, from coffee makers to potters to alchemists.
That's incredible. I also want to ask you, you mentioned this pause between your city life, going back to, where your roots started in Michigan. I think that a lot of artists that we work with feel this pressure to be constantly being able to produce or move on to the next thing or build. And I personally think that there is such power in pause. And so I wonder, what did that pause specifically mean for you, or how do you view that now, kind of retrospectively looking back? It seems like that was a really pivotal moment to have that space to kind of reflect and go inward.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some times in my career thus far where there's been these intervals, and yes, these moments of pause that have been super informative and necessary. And I think it's a gift in time, which is hard to accept, because yes, our society is you need to be producing, you need to be making money, you need to be et cetera, et cetera. but the void in those intervals are really important to realign. And I think to come back to the question of what do you want to create in this world? How do you want people to what do you want people to experience when they see your work? How do you want them to feel? Who are you as an artist? And it's a really beautiful gift to be able to have that time to sort of recalibrate, I think.
Absolutely.
An attunement, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're finding these artists, what's the vehicle for that? Are you in Reddit? Are you on blogs? Are you on Instagram? How are you finding these artists back then, and has that changed and evolved over time? When we worked with artists, we would read magazines and who, we would get to know the writers of the magazines and get to know their curation and their taste.
Yeah.
And so we would trust, what they're talking about. So how do you get, involved with these artists?
Yeah, interestingly, so last week I was on site in Arizona doing a site visit at a new hotel. And I stayed a day later, went to the nearby town, was just walking around. Coincidentally, a woman came out of this gallery and we just connected, and she started sharing the stories, telling me about all of these different artists. So sometimes it's just these like beautiful and preferably moments of connection and serendipity. Magazines, I love learning about artists through magazines. I feel like there's just more of a storied approach there. Instagram has been a good vehicle, but for me it's like going to the place or the destination or uncovering through galleries, galleries that I admire.
Yeah.
Speaking to gallery owners.
And Jess, you've worked a lot with the nonprofit sector.
Yes.
So you've had to find artists to help the cause that you've been working for. And how would you find artists?
Yeah, so we typically would kind of conceptualize the holistic experience that we wanted to create within that exhibition or gallery, or I worked a lot in curating like hospital hallways or hospital rooms, like clinical spaces. So it was really trying to cultivate a sense of warmth and grounding. And so then we would draft a specific request for proposals and kind of put it out there, and hopefully artists would be receptive to that. And that's how we typically began those communications. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I know that, Megan, you visit the studios of these artists. So it's not just a magazine, a phone call, and then I need this, that. You go visit and you spend time, and these people have become your friends. And in Santa Fe, New Mexico, of course, it's a small town. So when you came here to visit these artists, people were telling me about you probably before I really got to know you. And so, that was really exciting to know that you took the time to care. I really appreciate that when we talk about taking pause. I know you're working in the studio, but kind of like me, I'm not really working, I'm just hanging out in the studio and I'm observing and I'm learning and I'm having the best time.
Yes.
So these pauses are really beneficial to my career, as they have been for yours, would you say?
Absolutely. And when I look back on like writings writings and reflections of that time, or what I've created that in Divine Will has also come up later. Like for instance, in Detroit, I had a lot of space, literally and figuratively, to create sort of the vision of Godin, which is largely inspired by the concept of Ma, which is the space between. And though I didn't necessarily have like the work, it was so rich in like connecting with artists and building spaces, doing interesting work that was really informative in the next phase of career. So a lot of what I was working on in Detroit was informative to this next phase when I started working with Auberge.
Yeah. I love how you speak about space as a vessel and how you view that, and how also just hearing you speak in this conversation as well, I'm thinking about how time can also be a vessel of growth, of creation, of reflection, of all these things, but specifically to space and how you curate objects within a space. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit how you approach that, what your mentality is for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. Objects to me hold meaning. The story behind them, the materials. I can geek out on material, like what's the frequency of the material, That's why when I look at an artist's work, I really want to see the process, their materials. And a lot of times that actually is more important or interesting to me than the product itself or the art, the art piece, whatever medium it is. And then even if there's a new project that I'm working on, or maybe it's a hotel space or a residential space or just an object, I kind of will ask them, like, look, I love the materials that you incorporate. I feel like this could be really beautiful in this context. Would you want to work on something custom?
I love your question about space and the vessel for that, but also including time.
Yeah.
And I know that I've seen your studio and I've gotten to peek into your mind because you put out these frequencies as they relate to certain minerals and different ideas. And I was studying the solfeggio frequencies at that time as well. And it just really is very interesting, How did you get into that? I was thinking that I might lose my mind going into this rabbit hole.
I think for me, my work is definitely this intersection of design and well-being. And so I think about like space as a vessel to elicit emotion, to help one connect with themselves, to help one connect with other people, to create connectivity in general, or maybe just a container to allow for, reconnection. So, and reattuning the resonance within you. Obviously, we're all frequency. And so, yeah, how do we look at objects and the interior spatial design in general as a way to kind of reflect that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also really hear you talking about the importance of understanding the lineage of the object and the story of the maker and the story of the materials. And I personally believe that objects can kind of fill gaps and create an opportunity for people who might not exist in the same time together, an opportunity to connect with one another. So everyone who looks at a painting is connected by that experience of looking at a painting, right? And I really hear from you the importance of learning those stories of the makers, of the materials within your practice of curating and experiential design. So how would you recommend that artists or makers really convey that story? It's hard if you're not always in that same space where you're always able to explain that to the viewer of that, but how do you view the integrating storytelling and really understanding the holistic creation of that object?
Yeah, I think sharing the process. Like what was the intention behind it through a very authentic lens. But yeah, what was the process of creating this? Why? Through images, text, whether that's just like raw time-lapse videos or footage on Instagram to like an actual show that maybe has the raw materials present and in the space so guests can view them, or maybe there's like smaller images of process. And I think that really helps create this emotional connection with the viewer, collector, and the artist. I think it also almost is like this sense of vulnerability too, where the artist is sharing, okay, this is the rawness that went into creating this. This is kind of the thinking. I love seeing sketches too, that analog and having the sketches shown, and I think people really want to see that.
In your Substack, you write about, storytelling at every touch point. So this is exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like a synesthesia experience. So, sight, smell, sound, taste, feel. Is that something that you're talking about right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think a really good example of that would be, and bringing it back to the site visit because it's just fresh in my mind, is so we're walking the property and I'm thinking through the arrival experience. And like, okay, let's have an element of fire. If people are walking up and what is the aroma? Do we have creosote? Because that's definitely a plant of the desert. So they're smelling like that fresh rain smell. Is there a water fountain element? And as they're looking ahead, having this beautiful hacienda-style table that has a really interesting floral element to it, and maybe it's red clay because that's the clay in sort of the Arizona desert that was used by the natives. And then behind that is there sculpture? Is there a piece of art? So really like considering all of those sensorial touch points, which I feel the sensorial touch points are a gateway to embodiment within, and like, coming to your body, coming, to that space of presence where time is doesn't matter.
For a
It's
lot
like
of
irrelevant. Yeah.
For a lot of people that are going about their lives and they drop the kid off at school or at sports practice, and then they got a call from their work colleague that funding is down for this, and they're on their way and they got a flat tire, and so throughout their week they made it to the art show. How do they slow down to really feel that? It's almost like when I do an art show, I'm like, okay, get a massage first. Do you know what I mean? Drink some of this chamomile. But, everyone's going through their life. And so they're getting there, they're parking, they walk up to the gallery or the space that you're designing, and then they open the door, and then what? How do they get there?
Sure.
And do you want to accelerate that? Can you not accelerate that? Where is that line, of how to bring them there?
Yeah, it's almost like I was writing recently about this notion of a threshold, right? Like, which is doors in some way. And like the moment they enter the door, they're almost, it's a portal to another world, if you will. And that is deeply through the music. I'm so sensitive to music. I'm sure you're all sensitive to music. Music is a big one. If it's chaotic, it's gonna affect your central nervous system. If the scent is off, it's gonna do the same. So how do you look at like the subtleties and the nuances of a designed experience that can really bring people to a sense and a space of presence? And I think having the right music, lighting, they say like LED lights, like being cautious about LED lights too, because they're disruptive on your central nervous system too. So really thinking about all of those sensorial components, and again, the essential need for like that spaciousness and that void.
Absolutely.
There's this, it's alchemy in some ways, right? It's like thinking about all of these things like add up to a formula that can really create a resonance.
Whenever we're meeting with artists consulting, Jess is very good at asking them right away, how are you feeling today? And we have this short amount of time, that is allotted for a meeting, but I like how you take time to do that, and that's part of inviting them to relax or share their moments that they've had, And we've all had our moments too, like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we get to it when we meet. We're like, how was your day?
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you to be all right?
Yeah,
All right,
okay,
let's
cool.
go. Like,
Human connection.
Human
right?
connection.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too. I always want to create space for it's like these are the things that I think we should talk about today in our consulting work. But what's top of mind for you? Because if there's one question that's burning in your brain that you're not going to be able to focus on the rest of our conversation until we address this thing or something that happened or a new exciting opportunity that's happened to present work. So I think that is like slowing down, entering new spaces, new conversations. It's so important to have that moment to transition into the new arena you've arrived in.
Sure.
And something I think about a lot with artists is they have that control of sense, of sounds, of lighting within their studio space. And also, as artists, we typically showcase our works in other people's spaces, in galleries, and art markets, online. All of these spaces that we might not have complete control of. And so how would you recommend, I think a lot of artists just need a little bit of encouraging to step into ownership, that they can ask those questions of the gallery owner. Or so what are some missed opportunities that you maybe see when you walk into a more traditional gallery or exhibition space? You're like, oh wow, like I wish that they would have considered this small thing that actually is a really big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a movement away from the traditional, and I would say more like stale sort of gallery experience.
Yes.
Which is why Horseshoe, Bobby, your gallery down below, is so loved, because people walk in, they feel it's an invitation, really, they can feel comfortable to look, to ask questions, to really make their own experience within it. And I think the traditional gallery space, like I remember even living in New York when I was young, and I'm like hustling student, working, interning, I would go into a gallery and I wanted to see the art, and I also felt this like insecurity and a sense of like I didn't belong here. And I think we've come a long way since then to create more of these immersive spaces that feel inviting. At least they should be, yeah.
I spend a lot of time going into the gallery before I open. I do light a little incense, you know, and I do set the intention, and I'm like, you know, I want everyone to feel welcome, you know. So that's just been a part of what it is. And I also want to pay the bills, you know. So there is a lot of reminding myself, like, because the more I chase the money, the less money I make. The more I chase my intentions and my passion, the more money I make. So that's kind of a paradoxical thing that happens, and we're always encouraging people to chase their passion.
Absolutely.
Right? You know, because then whatever far away, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, in their idea of success, if they chase their passion, then they'll be aligned with themselves.
Yes.
If they chase the money, they're going to have to realign with themselves. And that might be backtracking, burning it down. There's all kinds of ways that, you know, to get to that, jump back to the alignment. And so it could be jarring, you know, if you're going down the wrong track, right? But it's hard to believe in yourself and trust yourself and believe your passion. So, you know, trusting your gut is super important, you know?
Yes, your intuition and not, I think in an age of so much social media, like, I think it's important, speaking from my own experience, but to not get caught up in the craze of everyone else's work. I think you can lose yourself in the rabbit hole of that. And to just remember, you know, what is your authentic expression and keep coming back to that.
How do you balance returning to your authentic vision versus the pressure of performing for documentation, like for showing the process in this specifically digital era? Is that something that you feel like that struggle? Because I feel that sometimes about like, what is my authentic creation process versus what do I feel like I need to be doing in order to connect with my audience?
Yes. Yeah. And I go back to, I do definitely relate to that. And I go back to this, like, does this feel in alignment with me, or is this feeling more like I need to do? Do I feel like, how do I feel when I'm expressing or sharing? You know, it could be a process. And I also try to be mindful of, you know, allowing myself to just really be in the process without feeling a need to like take photos or do anything, because it can take away. And I'm kind of like, I like kind of hide a little bit. So I am trying to push myself to share a little bit more on my process and how I think. Yeah.
It's been helpful to have companies like Passion House Media come to the openings and document what we're doing, because I don't have to worry about that. Sometimes, you know, I take my phone out and try to grab a bunch of pictures, but it doesn't really accurately, you know, display that. So having someone that can help you photograph the process, you know, is really helpful. And it also, when you look at it yourself, you're like, oh, it kind of, you know, you're stepped outside of what you've been doing to see how other people see what you're doing.
Yes.
How they portray that via photo or video. So it's so important to have someone that can help you do that, I think.
Yeah,
You know?
definitely for artists, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because it helps you stay present in that moment too. We've been talking about like once you're in the space, once you've crossed that threshold, staying within it. And anything like a phone call or a flat tire, or those things that you were mentioning earlier, it takes you right out of that. And it makes you have a completely different experience rather than if you were able to be fully immersed. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Relying on our community is always the answer, right? It's relying on our community.
That's a great, community. That's so important, So we have community, and you have someone that you meet in Arizona that says, "Have you heard about this person in my community of artists?" And then you're listening, and so community is important.
Community in that space of abundance. Yeah.
Say more about that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I felt it all in my body.
No,
Say
I
more.
think coming from, I think it's, as a creative, as an artist, the feeling of scarcity is real at times, and also sometimes frustrating to have to like validate your work, right? Like, why do I have to keep like begging you to like pay me what I need to be paid?
Yeah.
Or the value of that artwork that has 60 plus hours into it, 100 plus hours. But anyways, just staying in the mindset of abundance is so important, in knowing that like I think the universe favors the bold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These types of things have been hundreds of years present, but more recently I've heard people talk about things like abundance, the law of abundance, the law of polarity, spirit of lack, And honestly, I've been in a place where I've been lacking. And it's a lot of work to get to the abundance part. It's an ongoing thing. We're all works in progress. But I was honestly quite annoyed when people say, well, just don't have the spirit of lack. It's like, well, I have 2 jobs right now. Do you know? Like, I'm trying to work hard. So how do we, ease into that? Is there an ease? Does your back have to be against the wall to understand these concepts? How do people really, really, truly, receive this? Because there is kind of a wall when someone with abundance is telling someone without abundance that they shouldn't have the spirit of lack, right?
Yeah. It's like telling someone who's angry to relax. It's like, don't tell me to relax.
I've deleted calm down from my vocabulary.
Love that for
Okay.
me and everyone else. Yeah.
I think I always come back to, it's a difficult one. I'm like this. I'm up here and down. There's, it's kind of life in general. But if you can, that's where I think even ritual is important. Having a ritual, having like a morning, having a mantra, having something that brings you back to just a space of trust. Reading about like super accomplished artists back in the day who, the Leonardo da Vinci's, the Michelangelos, that how much time and effort went into their creations, and maybe it wasn't discovered right away, but I don't know, trust to me is like a big one, to come back to surrender and trust. I know that, again, like community, you have people around that support you and hold space. I think it can feel very siloed, and I can go into my head and feel very alone, but to remember that it's so important. We're all connected, so to know that you can I can call you up Jess, I can call you up Bobby, and like have coffee, and to feel a sense of support.
Absolutely.
I think shifting too about I think when we're feeling abundance or lack, it's in one aspect, one silo of our holistic selves. So I know for me, if I'm feeling lacking, it's typically like in finances or other capitalistic pressures that we face in our society. And so really leaning into, okay, perhaps I'm lacking in this area of my life, but where do I find abundance? Yeah. Is it in having 300 plus days of sunshine where we live? Is it in grabbing coffee with my community? Where are those other aspects that I can really lean into and then kind of recalibrate and balance as well?
So would you reach out and ask somebody for coffee or help? How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a journey. As you know, better than most. Help is a hard thing for me to ask for and to receive, but that is something that I'm really working on to reach out on those things and rely on the community and show up to spaces that I trust. I think that there are a few coffee shops in town that I have familiar faces at. There's your gallery. Whenever you have an opening, it's amazing. There's just such loving, giving folks that sometimes I need that energy more than other times. And sometimes I'm able to give that energy and sometimes I need to receive it. So it's always a balance.
It is a balance, I think, too. And you speaking kind of reminded me of the power of saying no as well. Sometimes we give so much of ourselves that we're feeling a little bit like, empty, but we're trying. So we're not giving our full selves to even help others. So, how do we get to the point where we're helping others altruistically from the overflow? And that's where I think a lot of the precious gold is in that. So saying no to things that don't serve us, right? The universe helps those that help themselves, right? So, you got to help yourself first. That's a very difficult and challenging concept for me to understand because I feel like when I help myself, I'm not helping others. But I know that I needed to help myself, so saying no to things that don't serve me really was quite helpful. So as an artist, as a designer, how do you help yourself to make sure that you're outputting what you want to convey, to express as an artist? Do you say no to other things, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point with artists too, is saying no to, if it doesn't align with the integrity of your work and the expression of it, then it's probably not a right fit. And something more aligned will come in. And that really ties in kind of that abundance scarcity model too.
Like trusting
The mindset.
that
Yeah.
it'll come to you when it's ready. Yeah, definitely. And how do you view, I want to go back slightly to something else that you said that kind of like I put a pin in my brain. You mentioned the importance of ritual. And like I think a lot about creating space and curating objects as very ritualistic. And in this conversation of when you're feeling scarce, like I know when I'm feeling down about my practice, I always clean. I declutter, I clean, I vacuum, I mop, all the clay dust is gone. And I think having those rituals that you can rely on are so important in regrounding and taking that space and taking that moment. And so how do you view curating rituals to really feel uplifting and feel like personally connected to be able to sustain that spirit of abundance?
Yeah, my morning ritual has shifted a little bit. I started doing this course on creating sacred altars, and it's led by an artist out of Australia. Her name is Kiara. She's an amazing artist, and she does like these more like, they're like sun, not sun mandalas, but I'll have to share it with you.
Oh,
They're
okay.
extravagant. I can't even really describe them, but it's radiance, it's light. And so we've had 3 sort of monthly workshops where we're all coming together, and it's been an invitation to create an altar. And on the altar, you look at what I view as like the 7 directions, right? But north, south, east, west, above, below, within. And on my altar, I have anything from like stones to the glass oil vessel to sandalwood, a beautiful piece of bark, selenite. And really, I will sit with it in the morning, too. No, it's not a little woo-woo, but like
No, that's so lovely.
there is like a beauty in how I feel like, and it's in the north is the glass, and it's also informed by my astrology chart. And so I've tried to balance like my chart with I have heavy earth and water. So balancing some of that and also incorporating like shell, which is symbolic of water, or sandalwood, which is definitely symbolic of earth, and adding it to this altar. And sitting with that, with those elements that really speak to me. If I have a question that I want to bring to the altar, I bring it to the altar. So it's almost like, which is, altars are like historic, like the indigenous peoples, they're really quite powerful when used in intentional ways. But that's like a big ritual, is like sitting at the altar, breath work, like writing. Writing is a big one too, an invitation to write. And then evening is just try to like clear out anything from the day that didn't maybe align, or just reset for the next day.
Yeah.
Would you walk us through, so you do this morning ritual, and maybe you have a few hours of your own time, and you get a phone call. And I'm making this up because let's just make it happen, let's manifest this. Someone from, what's your favorite state right now?
I'm loving visits to Montana right now.
Montana. Someone in Montana is building a hotel, and they've heard of you with your work with One Hotel and Auberge, and what you've done. And so they call you and say, we want to hire you. What happens? Right?
Well, usually they say a little bit more detail. About
Okay,
what they wanna hire you for.
we're building a hotel. We stayed at one of your...
Yes.
Yeah. She says
Period.
yes. They've been to one of your spaces. They've experienced it. They know you're good. They've gone on your LinkedIn or your Substack, and they've vetted you already.
Yeah.
And so, but they say yes. So I guess I'm more interested in, do you fly to Montana and have them sit down and talk about the 7 directions? You know what I'm saying? Or do you create a pitch deck? What happens? Someone watching this is right now, they're building a hotel, a resort, a space, and they want to hire you, but maybe they're not sure how the process is going, because I remember when you and I started doing the Beals & Co. and outside of the box, outside of the gallery, nobody was doing this. So we kind of had to forge our own way. I felt like I had a machete and I was building the path, which is a little more difficult. I try not to complain about that too much, but it was challenging.
Yeah.
So not many people will know what we're talking about, really. So someone watching this, they're designing something, that's really special.
So these rituals are really personal tools for me to access my intuition, and with these consistent rituals, I'm able to, I've found more closely understand when a client comes to me, what they're looking for, like through intuition, through observation, probing them on what they want to do. Like, is it overseeing the experience design? Is it ideally like the holistic design, from the art direction to experiences, programming, interiors? Like, how does that all fit together and work within the lens of the brand and intention for the project? But that's kind of how I would approach it, and then thereafter really put together this like creative pitch of what I see, again, from the moment someone arrives to the moment they depart, and all of those touch points in between.
So you have this holistic approach, concept, and then you have the authenticity, because I know you're going to visit every artist, everybody that touches any material in the space.
Like the art is so informative of the space and the experience as well.
How would an artist in Montana, find you or find this opportunity? We're always searching, for our artists that we work with and consult with, these types of opportunities. One artist wanted to do artist in residence, and so, we found that for them. So, how do artists do this, find you?
Definitely different ways to find me, through solely online websites. I think for an artist to really think about, some of the hotels that are maybe opening up, or interior designers that they align with that they could get in touch with, different developers or gallery owners. So really doing some outreach as well. And also, I think a really good practice that I've recently learned, which might be great for artists too, is what's an ideal scene? So creating in their head like an ideal scene for how they'd want their art to be experienced. Is it in a hotel? Is it this more like immersive gallery experience? Like, what does that look like? So they're putting that vision into the universe for it to be, received in its most authentic form. Trusting, surrendering, come what may.
So digitally, what's your website?
Yeah, godindesign.com. I almost said www.godindesign.com.
It's still relevant. There's still the www.
And what's your Instagram?
Meghan Godin. Yeah.
Okay. And so that's digitally, they can find you that
Yes.
way. What are other resources that we know? Can an artist go and find, where are resorts opening up that I can place my art in? Is there a thing like that you're aware of?
I don't know if there's an actual like collective site. No, not necessarily. It could sometimes be, somewhere like industry conferences that are happening too.
Would
But
you ever do a call to artists? Would you be interested in that? Or are you more interested, like currently in my career right now, I'm not doing call to artists. But there was a time where I was. Are you interested in that currently?
I think definitely once it gets, when there's a new project, and it's sort of in that interior design phase, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And we've spent so much time, which I very much prefer experiencing art and objects in real life than the tangible sense.
Yes.
And we've been talking a lot about social media, websites, like how we present ourselves digitally as well is a very important tool in the toolkit for artists to be found or to kind of start those conversations. So I'm curious how you think, or if you have any advice for people who really want to start their website or revise their website or social media presence to incorporate those other elements that we've kind of been talking about staging in a physical sense.
Yeah, I think having a really strong artist statement on their website, sharing about the process, why they chose the materials they did. Yesterday I was on a call with a ceramicist in Montana for a hotel out there, and he was talking about how he goes and he forges the clay, and it's very so if that's your approach, beautiful, and also elaborate on that. And then just making sure you have very good images, high resolution of your work on the site too.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So you are guiding by offering this feedback artists to a kind of a digital presence. So we're talking about high-res images, artist statement. Are you saying that people read still? Like
Or they're like, Siri, read this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Or listen, yeah.
yeah, I think websites are still relevant. Of course, like Instagram is a big means, or other, tap in like different art curatorial websites, galleries, of course, that showcase the work, beautifully. But yeah, I mean, I think Instagram's great for reels, showing the videos, the process, live streams.
Yeah. And I was, kind of joking because I do love reading artist statements, and we get asked a lot, do I need an artist statement? And the answer is yes.
I agree.
It's really informative for people to read just a little snippet, if they haven't found your Instagram, if they happen to find the artist statement before the Instagram or the YouTube or whatever. I think it's important, and
But if speak it aloud, if voice is more compelling to you, they can listen to it.
See, that's so creative, right? So if you have a button that says artist statement, you click it, and it's a video of you saying your artist statement. I really like that too. That's really great advice.
Yeah, or like, and if it's instead like, maybe it's a handwritten with the assumption it's legible, and you take a really beautiful photo of it and put it up on the site. I think there's something really nice, and I'm also seeing a trend in that right now of it's not so flat online. Like people are actually creating either marks that are 3D and more handwritten typography in the logo. Yeah, so there could be like that handwritten analog element to the site too, if that feels better.
I love that when we were designing the Horseshoe Gallery concept that we got to do our own font.
I know.
So that was really fun and interesting, and
It feels like rustic and handmade.
yeah.
The Horseshoe Gallery, yeah.
Yeah, so I started to handwrite my own website as well, which is very interesting and fun. In the world of AI and all these things, I just wanted people to know that we're doing this stuff by hand, even in a digital presence. I think is super important. But you're providing experiences through synesthesia, through sight, all the five senses, right? Perhaps there's a sixth sense because you talk about intuition a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Or just that void, that ma, which is the space between that pause, which allows for kind of connection to consciousness.
I love that. I was taking a moment to have that sink in.
Right.
That's so powerful.
You know who does a really brilliant expression of that? One of my favorite designers is Axel Vervoet. And he has an development in Antwerp in Belgium. And it's incredible. It's mixed use, so there is some residential. And then there's also, he's converted old sugar factory into, you walk into this building and then there's just this amazing, you're walking in a circle and just looking at this artist's work. He has a James Turrell piece, which is a chapel, super quiet, ignites all the senses. He also has artists that you can see, an amazing Mahmoud, Islamic artist who takes old rugs, Persian rugs, and designs with them, makes art from these Persian rugs, and then another Belgian jewelry designer who's exceptional, and art is her inspiration. So I think it's exciting and it's really beautiful because you can walk around that development and you can find a moment of pause and retreatment, and then also connect with the art. Yeah.
I love hearing what's inspiring you right now, and in kind of a closing reflection, part of this, what else is inspiring you right now that you've touched on some things, but is there something else that's really perhaps we don't know about? I know that you and I talk about the Dawnlight Sanctuary, and we talk about waterfalls up north and all these different things, but what's inspiring you right now besides this conversation?
Clearly, yeah.
I mean, to my last point about development becoming more of integrated in art and healing, commercial and residential spaces, I think that's really interesting. I think we're thinking about how to be better stewards of the land too. Herbalism is really inspiring me right now. There's this book called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Iwagara, and it's a lot of ethnobotanical traditions. So a lot of more indigenous herbs and kind of the meaning both spiritually and also clinically behind how these herbs can help you.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation that I want to have with you because that's amazing. Yeah.
And herbs and scent kind of ties. Obviously, I love scent in making different essential oils, but I've just found the way I shift my mental cognition or emotionally, I shift when I take my tincture that I invited you all to participate in this morning, or spray pine or rose. It makes a difference.
Yeah, the pine activated the pineal gland.
Yes.
And I know that the 4-4-4 breath, inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, and exhaling for 4 seconds can do the same thing. So together, are we going to overdose on intuition or, what, I don't think so, right? Like it's all healthy for us all.
Absolutely.
So would you advise artists to create these rituals and practices for themselves? Some people can. I went to Denver, to the Denver Art Museum for a tour, and I woke up early. I wasn't exercising, but I saw everybody in Denver running around, exercising, and it was pretty inspiring to me. But I'm sure that's what they're doing before they go to their office meeting or
Oh,
whatnot.
yeah. Yeah, movement is an amazing way to move through any like static energy, anything that's like somatic, and yeah, I think ritual is really important. I personally believe that, and everyone has their own way of expressing that. If it's just even a cup of tea and sitting with a cup of tea in the morning, I think is ritual in and of itself. But also knowing when to, having your toolbox of like, okay, I feel stagnant or stuck or scarcity is coming in. Like, how can you get out of that? What's
Yeah,
your tool to get out of that?
what is the tool if someone's stuck? What if someone's drinking too much alcohol, participating in too many drugs, or there's certain vices that they're perhaps not being existing in their most authentic self, of who they can be. How do they get out of that? Like I know that tea has herbs and you can smell it, and chamomile will relax you, and there's different teas for different things. But how can we help an artist that's watching this snap out of it? They're gonna have to change some things, right?
Yeah.
So how can we ease that for them? Is there an easement? I often wonder.
I'm not sure. It's so dependent on each individual. I find nature to be the greatest inspiration and way to going for a hike. The Japanese created Shinroku, forest bathing, for that very reason, because so many of their people suicide was really high and depression was super, super high. Because, they're very perfectionist. Like, it can be an intense society. So they designed that to go out in nature, slowly walk along the creek, like see what you notice, listen to the birds, be really present in nature. And I just think I personally experience this softening within when I do that.
So what's a practice or a habit that you carried over time? We're talking about nature. Is that a habit that you're, obviously integrated into wanting and desiring to go out into nature for your personal, practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having grown up in the Midwest, I am naturally drawn to water. So here in New Mexico, spending time at the creeks and rivers, going to the rivers, watching the water just rush over the stones, staying present with that, it's it's a reminder for me to really soften, an invitation to soften, and it ties to this sentiment that I recently was reminded when I was looking at my notes on my computer, but it says, become a refuge of stillness in a world so quick to move. And to me, it's this reminder of, move at your own pace. When everyone else is moving quickly, just stay in your innermost self and form, and and soften.
I too am from the Midwest, so your thoughts and comments about Lake Michigan water deeply resonates with me as well. That was always where I would go, winter, summer, year round, like the lake. When I first moved out here, my husband would always kind of poke fun at me because I wouldn't be able to tell directions. But he's like, but you always knew where the lake was, but you can't see the lake, but you can see the mountain ranges. So it's an internal, it's a gravitational pull. And a reminder for us to slow down, to connect, to always be connected, just like water is. It's the water cycle. It's in physical, it's in our clouds, it's in our ice, it's in our bodies, it's in our environment. And whether we can take a moment to connect with that just for a moment of dipping our toe into the water or fully submersing ourselves within it, taking that time, that pause to reset, no matter how long we have, is so important in our creative practices. I'd also like to hear, I'm really curious about what you're working on creatively, professionally, personally. Like, what's kind of how would you like to leave us with today? Like, what are you most excited, or anything else that you'd want us to know about you or your practice?
Yeah. I'm working on like a personal project. Yes, I have my more consulting work with hotels, and that's wildly creative and super inspiring and very much all about connection. There's also my internal sort of disconnected, not disconnected internally, but I go into my own space. Yes, exactly. I go into my own personal space, and it's working on different different synergies. And right now I'm looking at the vessel that will hold the scent. And to me, this vessel is anchored to self. It's anchored to space and home. So it's a scent for space and skin. Yeah, so I'm excited to bring that to life. It's taking time as it does, and
Right.
is the creative process, because I want the expression to be as authentic as possible. But also I need to remind myself that perfection is not always a good thing.
It's such a hard balance,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but that's so exciting. I can't wait to, I was going to say hear more about it, but I really just can't wait to smell it.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait to smell
Next
it.
time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meghan. This was such a pleasure
Thank
being able
you.
to just have this conversation with you, hear all the insights that you were able to provide. Thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time.
thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time. And I think we're going to help a lot of people just watching and listening to this. And I'm Bobby Beals.
I'm Jess Leonard.
And this is Beals and Leonard Consulting Insights with special guest Meghan Godin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.